On the 13th of October, the budget 2024 was tabled in the Parliament. I was quite disappointed with it. Although it is once again the largest budget in Malaysian history at 393 billion ringgit, the development expenditure was cut. The money that is supposed to be allocated to build the nation, that amount was less than the previous budget. It looks like the government cares more on the short-term fiscal objectives over sustainable development of the country. Let's rewind the clock to 1 year ago when the PH-led government introduced their first ever budget in the Parliament. Back then, the total budget allocated was 388 billion ringgit, of which 99 billion was set aside for development expenditure. That's about 25% of the total budget to be used to build a first world Malaysia. 25% is not the most ideal percentage to build a country, but let's be honest, the government has its hands full with subsidies worth 81 billion ringgit, which is 21% of the budget, and 121.8 billion ringgit, 31% of the budget dedicated to salaries and pensions for government employees. These two items alone became the big elephant in the room, limiting the ability of the government to squeeze out more budget for development. Fast forward to this budget. The government reveals three main pillars to maximize revenue and reduce spending, to deliver reforms to enhance government's and public delivery system, transforming the economy to be more SME friendly to encourage small businesses to grow, and elevating the well-being of the rakyat in the form of targeted subsidies to people who really need the money but not leaving anyone else behind at the same time. At the end of the day, the government hopes that it is able to bring down the fiscal deficit from 5% in 2023 to just 4.3% next year. In the effort to maximize revenue, one of the most eye-catching moves is the increase in the SST from 6% to 8%. So get ready to add 2% extra to almost everything that you buy starting next year. I use the word almost everything because unlike the GST where everything also kena tax, there's a limit to what SST can charge. Now, even the 2% increase on SST is not enough. So the government is going to broaden the category of items that will be charged SST. Things like logistics, brokerage fees when you trade shares, and even when you go karaoke next time. By broadening the category items, actually, isn't that looking more like a GST already? Remember in the past, the PH coalition was all out condemning the implementation of GST, saying the GST will increase inflation, burdening the rakyat because every transaction is taxed. For context, when Malaysia was under the GST regime, the government was collecting roughly 44 billion ringgit a year. That's a lot of money. And when we switch back to SST, in 2021 itself, the government merely collected tax revenue of around 28 billion ringgit. With the 2% increment on SST, that would give the government an extra revenue of 560 million ringgit, thereabout. Not very impressive. It seems to me that what they are doing with this budget is gradually use the SST to broaden what they are able to tax on, to bring the tax revenue closer to 44 billion ringgit in the past and making the SST as a broad-based tax system like the GST. In addition to that, there's another game changer that directly impacts investors, and that is the introduction of the capital gain tax for unlisted shares. Starting 1st of March 2024, if you plan to sell your shares in your unlisted shares investment, a 10% tax is waiting for you on the gains you make. I think there could be several billion ringgit worth of unlisted shares transactions every year, and some of these transactions are massive. For example, Kasem managed to raise $290 million in a Series E fundraising exercise back in January 2022. That one exercise alone could help the government gain $29 million worth of capital gain tax if it was transacted under this introduction of new tax. Now, here's the interesting part: exemption. If your private investment is planning for an IPO, or if you invested in a private company via a venture capital limited company instead of under your own name, the 10% capital gain tax will not affect you. Also, if the business is undergoing some form of internal restructuring, say you take over your friend's shares in a cafe business because of strategic planning for long term, correct me if I'm wrong, I think such exercise won't be affected by the capital gain tax as well. When it comes to saving money for the government, the spotlight is on subsidy rationalization. This means implementing targeted subsidies for those who truly need the money and stop subsidizing rich people for being a free rider. To be fair, the government is not going to take away subsidies overnight. That would create havoc in the economy. Instead, we have seen how the government has done it already when they started with electricity subsidies. For now, the government is targeting the top 10% of electricity consumers first. In the future, I don't know if they are going to reduce electricity subsidies further lah, right? Going forward, the government is going to remove the ceiling price on chicken and eggs, allowing prices to float freely based on demand and supply. Diesel subsidies will also be for targeted groups of consumers only, such as freight operators and all that. Now, let's go back and talk about development expenditure. After implementing new policies to increase revenue and lowering the spending for the government, I was really hoping that more funds will be allocated to development expenditure. At first glance, it appears to have decreased from 99 billion ringgit in 2023 to 90 billion ringgit next year. Yes, it's a bit disappointing, and it might seem like a missed opportunity for large infrastructure projects to stir up the stock market. But here's the hidden gem in the details. The government seems to be steering its strategy towards empowering SMEs. You see, in the past, the government relied on huge government-linked companies with billions of ringgit to build something that is impactful to the economy. While that's straightforward and effective, very often such initiatives neglect the fact that many SMEs would miss out on the opportunity to grow. They were like overlooked stars. Remember, one of the 3 pillars of this budget is to transform the economy to be more business-friendly to SMEs so that they are able to grow bigger and be more competitive internationally. In my previous video, I talked about investing in startups. I'll leave the link here if you're interested to know how to invest in one of these businesses. Anyways, come back to my point. The government is trying to encourage SMEs to innovate and shine with this budget. It is giving out an investment tax allowance of 70% to 100% if the business is moving into high growth and high value industries. It is also giving out directives to government-linked companies to provide up to 1.5 billion ringgit funding to encourage startups and entrepreneurs to venture into this kind of stuff. On top of that, the government is allocating 28 million ringgit to develop My Startup platform for startup companies to accelerate their growth. 2.4 billion ringgit financial facilities for micro, small and medium enterprises. 44 billion ringgit worth of loans and financing guarantees for such companies. The list goes on and on. The beauty of this strategy is that the government doesn't need a lot of money to nurture SMEs to thrive. These businesses are nimble, they are agile and innovative. All they need is an opportunity and some aid from the government. And that's exactly what the government is providing in Budget 2024. In conclusion, it appears that while development expenditure might have seen a reduction on the surface, the government strategy in Budget 2024 is focused on encouraging long-term economic growth through support for SMEs and subsidy rationalization. That's why I made that video to talk about investing in startups. I believe the government is empowering smaller businesses and fostering innovation as the key to build a robust and sustainable economy. So, whether you are an investor, a business owner, or just someone simply curious about the country's economic growth, it's crucial to understand the nuances of Budget 2024. It's a dynamic plan that aims to shape Malaysia's future, and it's worth keeping a close eye on how these strategies unfold. Thank you for watching today's video. Hope to see you guys soon.